guys. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Legal Talk Tuesday. Today I have Kelly Phillips, partner at Bell & Company, PA, here with me today. We have had a lot of questions come in specifically about SBA loans and the relief and what's out there for small businesses. And so Kelly, being the expert, has agreed to come on and spend some time with us today answering any questions you have. And we've got some questions that we have frequently been asked that I'm going to ask her today. So first, I just kind of wanted to start off asking kind of what things are. So Kelly, do you mind kind of spending a minute talking about what the PPP is?
Yes. So it's commonly known as the PPP, which stands for Payroll Protection Plan. It is a loan designed to help a small employer cover the costs of payroll, state unemployment, retirement plan, health care, as well as mortgage interest on real property or personal property, rent of either real or personal property, and utilities. And it's for a specific period of time after you get the money that the funds are eligible to be forgiven. If you meet a certain set of qualifications, you go back to the bank and they certify that you have used the money in the way it was supposed to be used, and they'll forgive the loan.
Awesome. And also, can you kind of tell us, probably it's an exhaustive list, but which lenders are actually accepting these applications? And also, we've been getting the question, does it cap out? Do these lenders have a certain amount of applications that they take, process, and grant?
So these particular loans are 100% guaranteed by the government, and they do not require a personal guarantee by the person asking for the loan. But the banks who are eligible to process the loans already had to be approved to do SBA loans in the first place. So they are underwriting the loans themselves. So each bank has its own set of requirements of things that they are asking for to substantiate the amount of money you're asking them to front you, because the SBA put out the application and then the banks are having to do all the back end. Where does the number come from? And the maximum amount you can borrow has to do with your average payroll, and they will give you 2.5 times what your average monthly payroll is. So if your bank already does SBA loans, you can go there. I have heard from different places that if your bank does not do this and you try and go to a new bank specifically for this, lots of them are not accepting new customers if this is the intention of the customer. The overall pool across the country is $347 billion to fund these loans. And once that money is gone, there's no more right now. The Treasury Department has said they'll go back to Congress and ask for more, but as of now, that has not happened. So it's not allocated to banks. It's first come, first serve, as the bank certifies to their underwriting standards, and then submits that to the SBA and says, we approve this person for this amount of money. And then the SBA lets them release those funds at that point.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You said to apply, you're going to apply directly with, are you going to apply directly with the SBA, or do you go to your bank and they help you?
You have to go to the bank. There is an SBA application that you can get from multiple places, but the bank is the one who is taking those numbers and running them through their underwriting process. I've seen some banks that have provided spreadsheets with specific places to get numbers off of payroll things. I've seen some banks who have just sent the SBA's application and said, fill this out and we need this backup, and they didn't even explain to the customer where to get the information from. So it varies by which bank you're using, what type of information will be required other than that SBA application that they have put out, which tries to cover all kinds of situations from sole proprietor to self-employed to LLC. It has, if you're a veterans organization or a not-for-profit, so it's very generic. It's a page of putting in your primary information, the number you're eligible for, and then you initial by a whole bunch of certifications that you're not a felon in the last 5 years, and you promise you'll use the money for what they say and things like that. And then the second page is just you initialing some things. So the application itself is not long or difficult to fill out.
Okay. So it's just maybe some of the supplemental stuff that you have to provide to your specific bank.
Yeah.
So just kind of generally, I know there's a lot of nuances, but who is actually eligible for the PPP loans? I know that that doesn't necessarily cover all small businesses.
It's everybody who is under 500 employees, or that the SBA considers a small business at whatever threshold. So apparently the SBA says if you are this particular kind of employer, you count as a small business if you have up to X amount of employees, which is some number in excess of 500. Also, restaurants that have they get to use their employee count by location rather than in total. If someone owns, multiple restaurants, I don't know of anyone who employs 500 people in a restaurant, but apparently that happens. And so you get to do by location rather than in total all of your employees. I have a dentist group that has a common payroll agent and pays all of the clinics. And so each clinic had to do an application themselves. And then there's a place on the application to show who your affiliates are. So you do have to disclose if you have other entities, whether you are applying for funds for them or not. It doesn't matter. So as long as you have less than 500, you can apply. There are some attribution rules, and the SBA has some very specific rules that they go by to determine whether you aggregate, whether you don't aggregate. And so it can get super complicated in determining if you are worried about whether you have more than 500. There are some frequently asked questions and some resources like that on the SBA's website that can help you navigate to the final 500 employees.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That there are resources out there. One thing that we get asked to, I know that there's certain things that contract employees, freelancers are entitled to, but specifically, we've been asked, could 1099 workers be included in the payroll calculations for the PPP loans?
So there was a lot of confusion about this at first. Whenever the rule came out, the law was passed, the CARES Act was passed and said, we're going to do this. It looked like at first that you could include contract labor people in your count of my 2.5 times my average monthly payroll. But the SBA came out the Friday that they started accepting applications with sort of their final rules, because on the 3rd of April, businesses could, and sole proprietors with payroll could start applying. And then anybody who was an independent contractor or what the SBA considered self-employed, they could start applying on the 10th. And so the SBA came out on that 3rd and said, no, you people who are allowed to apply right now, you do not include your contract labor as part of your 2.5 times. Those people need to wait and apply on the 10th as themselves. So we had some people who had Schedule C businesses and they paid employees, and so they applied at the first time period. But if I had like a real estate agent who does not employ anyone, they could not apply until the 10th. I have a person who's a public speaker and does business coaching, she doesn't employ anyone other than through contract labor, and that's really how she makes her money. So she had to wait until the 10th to apply for herself, and then anyone that she paid could have applied for it on the 10th as well as a contract labor or independent contractor type of application. I have no idea how in the world the banks are going to certify that a Schedule C person used that money for payroll, because there is no payroll. But I'm sure that they will figure something out to try and make it so. The whole idea is that it's forgivable, so they will figure something out to make it be forgivable.
Right. And I encourage you guys that are out there watching, we're kind of going through this. We're talking about some of the most frequently asked questions that we get. But if you have any other questions specifically that you want us to answer, we're kind of following along. So post comment and we'll get to you if we see it throughout, or we'll come back to you at the end. So I want to kind of pivot a little bit. Another question we've been getting is, can someone apply for both the PPP and the EIDL? And you can kind of maybe explain what the EIDL is also.
So the EIDL was the first thing that was in the second round of legislation that was put out. The CARES Act is the third round. The second round included this EIDL, and you apply for that directly through the SBA website. You go there, you put in what your gross receipts were. If you had cost of goods sold, like it asks you some numbers kinds of questions. If you have a piece of rental property that let's say you have a condo at the beach and you can't rent it because nobody can come down there, you can put what your lost rents were. And so that is a true loan. It is not forgivable, but it is designed like a disaster loan, as if we had a hurricane or a flood or whatever. It's similar to that, but they are not requiring that there be, your house be blown away or whatever. So you apply for that on the SBA website. Within 3 days of being approved, you get $10,000. The $10,000 is a grant. You do not have to pay that back. And then you get funded whatever they determine, your loan needs to be. So you can have both types of loans, but they cannot be for the same thing. And since people didn't know about the PPP and had already applied, as soon as that EIDL was available, lots of people went on and applied. And so they got their $10,000, and part of what they were going to use it for was payroll. So as part of the PPP, you can refinance some of that EIDL, or all of it, if you said it was going to be for payroll, into the PPP, so it can become a forgivable amount. But you can say that I need the EIDL for buying cost of goods sold items, raw materials, things like that you can't get from your normal suppliers because they're not available. And so you're going to have to go somewhere else and get that. And it's more expensive or whatever. And then you can also say, hey, I need the payroll protection plans. I can keep paying my workers to be here, and it will help me pay the utilities and my rent and whatever. So you can do both, but it cannot be for the same set group of expenses. And if you've already asked for the one that was available first through the SBA website and gotten those funds, and you were going to use them for payroll, you can ask the bank as they do your PPP loan to roll those funds into that note, and then it becomes a forgivable amount.
Okay. So you've already kind of talked about how you can use the money. It kind of sounds like the EIDL may be available for more people than the PPP, just based on how they're set up.
It is. I have a client who has like a little entertainment kind of business where they do like kids birthday parties and petting zoos and things like that. And they don't have any employees. They don't have any rent. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have any of those things. And the PPP requires that 75% of your funds go to payroll. And so if you don't have any payroll, there's nothing you can do with the PPP. So those people are applying for the EIDL because it is a more generalized loan, but it does not have the forgiveness aspect to it, which is way more favorable to businesses. And in the past, it's been easy to have contract labor employees. You don't have to do payroll tax reports. You don't have to, file W-2s or anything like that. And so now it's sort of turning around and getting them on the back end for something like this when they don't have wages paid. And so they can't treat it like payroll and they can't have it forgiven. But they are eligible to do the other loan if they do have an economic loss of some sort.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because that's some of the clarification that we've been having to make is, we have several clients who don't necessarily have payroll. They're not W-2, even themselves, they're business owners and they're, pulling a disbursement or whatever. And so, that's good clarification. Laura has hopped on and asked if we could clarify the 10,000 or 1,000 per employee, and I think she's referring to the amount that you could get, the up to 10,000 for the EIDL.
Okay, so the EIDL, the 10,000, that is like your initial pop of money, and so once they approve you within 3 days, you can, as long as you're approved, you're asking for more than $10,000, they'll give you $10,000, and then after that, if you've asked for $150,000 or whatever, then you get the rest of it. And the $10,000 is grant money. They don't require you to pay that back, but anything over and above that, it is a true loan and has to be paid back.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Laura. So is there I know we already talked about there is a limited amount of funds, the $341 billion that's available. Is there a certain length of time that business owners have to apply for these loans? Are they closing?
Yes, they have until June 30th is the end of the period where they are taking applications. I don't think it's July. I think it's June. And so we don't expect there to be any money left by then. I honestly expect by the end of this month it to be all gone. Now they may go back and ask for more, but if people are just now thinking about applying, it's something that they need to do quickly. I do have clients who have already gotten their money, who applied during the first few days, and they have gotten their funds. So they're moving through them relatively quickly.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, if someone has already laid off employees and those employees have gone on to receive unemployment benefits, which I know several businesses did that early on, so that way their employees could go qualify for those benefits, do they need to actually stop that unemployment? And I guess they're going to rehire them back. Is that how it works under the loan?
Yeah, for the PPP, in order for you to have the payroll part forgiven, you have to hold on to a proportion of your employees that you had at the same time last year, basically.
Okay.
And so whenever you are going back to certify that this loan should be forgiven, that's part of what you're going to show them is, this is how many employees I had, this is how many employees I'm continuing to pay. You cannot cut people's salaries or hourly rates or anything like that more than 25% and still have that person count towards your total. But there's no rule that says that you can't give people raises. There's no rule that says that it has to be unrelated parties. I have a lot of professional folks who have self rental they own the building in a separate LLC and then rent it to their professional corporation or S corporation, there's no prohibition on that being eligible rent for purposes of this. The rule says that as long as the utilities or the rent or the mortgage were or lease were in place by February the 15th of 2020, those costs are eligible to be forgiven. You can't say, oh, I need this PPP, and then go out and get a new lease or go out and buy a new building or whatever and try and have that count. Once you get the funds, whatever you spend in the 8 weeks after you get the money is the pool of forgiveness. So they expect you to spend everything that they have given you within 8 weeks, and it has to be on those eligible expenses, and then you go back and certify to them that it has been spent. You met the rules about who you paid it to. You didn't cut employees. You didn't cut their wages. Those kinds of things.
So can you hire new employees or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can hire new employees. You can hire back the ones you had. It doesn't say that it has to be the same people, but that is the sort of intent behind it. Is not that you go out and hire all new teenagers so that you don't have to pay them but minimum wage. The intent is that this is available so that you can hold on to the workers that you had and not have to retrain, not have to put them on unemployment. And this 8 weeks is enough time to get everything back running in a normal fashion so that you don't need these supplemental funds after that.
Right. Well, that's all the questions I have. I don't see anything else on here. Do you want to kind of tell everyone how they can contact you or reach you if they need you?
Sure. Our website is bellandcompany, all spelled out, .net, and there's a contact us button on there that goes to our marketing director, Deanna. And you just tell her you saw me on something and she forwards those out. She's very quick about doing that. And then my personal email is kelly.phillips with 2 L's at bellandcompany.net. And our office phone is 501-753-9700. And we have like 4 people at our office right now. And we've actually switched our phones for the first time into an automated system. So if someone calls and doesn't know, it goes to a master voicemail and someone is checking that.
Well, that is awesome. Thanks so much. I know you're really busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and break that down. We've been getting a lot of questions. I know it's kind of confusing, but we really appreciate you coming on today. And thanks, you guys.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.